Hi, John from York Bay Financial Partners, looking at investment markets. It's been a pretty big week for President Trump. Obviously, the G20, the renewed talks and sort of ongoing trade discussions now with China back on track. Apparently, trade negotiations have started pretty much immediately. He had a very good meeting with President Xi, and it all looks as though a deal will be done. It's just a question of when and not if. Then in typical sort of President Trump style, he sort of tweeted out that he'd like to meet Kim Jong-un in the demilitarized zone. That sort of took place at the end of G20 on his way home, and he was the first sitting president to enter the demilitarized zone and meet with Kim Jong-un. And again, more sort of photo op, and if you were cynical, you would say, pretty good sort of political campaigning for his re-election. On the flip side, we still got the ongoing issue with Iran. They have now sort of gone above their sort of levels on the sort of nuclear program. And it's just going to be very interesting to see how that all plays through. In terms of sort of economic data, it's a little bit sort of quieter. Obviously, the US are heading towards their big holiday, July the 4th. So markets are relatively sort of quiet out there. Now, maybe that's not a bad thing. Obviously, the market's had quite a bit of froth over the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks, and maybe just needs a little bit of a breather. Obviously, it will be very interesting with earnings season coming up. But you've got to remember they're sort of, rearward looking, and it's what has happened in the last quarter. Really, I think what will be more important is, the guidance and the, sort of outlook going forward. If you look at it, the US economy is in a pretty good position. And what's going to be very interesting now is to see how the Fed sort of plays this. They were so obviously concerned with the sort of trade tariffs and trade war going on with China that the US economy was going to slow. That potentially appears to be sort of off the table now. US rates have started backed up quite a bit from sort of over 3% on the 10-year to back to around sort of 2% now. So on the back of potentially improving economic outlook, is there still a need for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates? Interesting, WTI and oil, really been hammered in the last couple of days. It's down nearly 5%. All sort of change in the European political scene as well, and also the ECB. It looks like Christine Lagarde will now be proposed as the successor to Mario Draghi. And obviously, Draghi has been pretty instrumental in the sort of low interest rate environment, even negative interest rates in certain sort of areas. Sort of pumping money into the economy, and it's just going to be very interesting to see how these sort of policies are sort of posed with a new leader. Reserve Bank of Australia has cut interest rates down to a historical low of 1% now, and potentially interest rates could still go lower. Here in New Zealand, investors are just sort of coming to terms with the record low interest rates, 1.5% for the OCR, and again potentially heading lower. Obviously, on the back of that cut in Australia, you would have to sort of surmise that potentially rates are going lower in New Zealand as well. Now, obviously, that's pretty good news for borrowers out there and should sort of underpin the housing market. But obviously, for depositors and savers, it's not such good news. Just on the back of that, Trustpower have a bond in the marketplace, 7 years. Rate hasn't been set yet, but the minimum rate will be 3.35%, fixed for the next 7 years. Now, if you're interested in that, call us on 0800 867 323. Now, KiwiSaver's all done and dusted now for this year in terms of getting maximum tax credits. That sort of transpired at the end of June. Now, if you're not too sure what those levels were and don't want to miss out for the coming year, say call us on 0800 867 323 or go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz. Now, for income options in New Zealand, so there are plenty of alternatives available out there. And if you're interested in discussing what's available, call us on 0800 867 323 or go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.